Bob Baer is a former CIA field officer and MSNBC terrorism analyst. Michael Sheehan is a former Special Forces officer himself. Mike, I want to ask you, how did we get bin Laden? Let's start. Let me go right now with a picture of how this happened, as we understand it. Here's how our elite Special Operations Forces got the most wanted terrorist in the world. Approximately 24 Navy SEALs rappelled into bin Laden's heavily guarded compound from 2 helicopters. In a nail-biting moment, one of those choppers suffered a mechanical failure. But the SEALs, the blue dots on the screen, proceeded with their assault. Bin Laden, the yellow dot, used one of his wives as a human shield, but she was killed. He fired on U.S. forces and was killed himself with a shot through the left eye toward the end of the firefight. A backup helicopter arrived on site. U.S. commandos then loaded bin Laden's body on board and blew up the crippled chopper before leaving. The entire raid took 40 minutes. Some of that time was spent searching the compound for more intelligence. There were no U.S. casualties, and President Obama monitored the entire operation in real time from the Situation Room in the White House. Again, Michael, I want you to give us a sense of how it worked beyond what we just showed you.
Well, Chris, this is a classic Special Forces hostage rescue type of operation, but this case, and rather than rescuing hostage, you're actually taking down an enemy, so it makes it a little bit easier. But it normally entails a long-term helicopter flight, landing at a difficult spot, and that's the most difficult part of the operation to begin with. Then second, moving toward the target, and then going through a door when you don't know what's on the other side of that door. Could be innocent civilians, women and children. It could be terrorists with weapons trained into your chest, or it could be a combination of the two. These operatives, in this case U.S. Navy SEALs, are trained both in infiltration into the target and then clearing the target with precise lethality. Be able to clear rooms, take out enemy targets, protect civilians, gather intelligence, and get out of there quickly and effectively. It went textbook operation, and that has always not been the case in the past, Chris. So this is a big victory for the U.S. and for U.S. Special Operations Forces, a classic operation done perfectly.
Great, Michael. Let's go right now to Bob here. Bob, do we have a sense of how much they were caught by surprise? Were they confronted with gunplay as they arrived? Was this a shootout from the second they got there, or did they get the jump on them?
No, they come in quietly. They had no idea this was coming. You know, once the flashbang grenades start flying, it's too late. You neutralize everybody in a building like this. There's nothing they can do. Someone might pick up a gun and you shoot them. I mean, the word is right. Michael's right. It's textbook. This was a brilliant operation. I've been part of ones that failed in Iran in 1979. And it was an amazing thing. I just still can't believe it.
Michael, let me ask you about the thinking of the SEALs as they went in there. What were they worried about that might have blown this whole operation? Were they afraid that there'd be a lot more people in there? Were they afraid that bin Laden would be hiding in a safe room, a haven of some kind? Was there anything that could have stopped this from succeeding once they had the model set up and the training?
Absolutely, and they obviously had great preparation. As you mentioned, Chris, a model is set up, so they practice this operation. They practice it at night, and that with their night vision devices, able to move stealthily, quickly at night with lethality. But they don't know. The intelligence is never perfect in an operation like this. They don't know they're going after bin Laden or some other high-value target. They're not even sure who's there. They have a hope that that's bin Laden, but it could be somebody else. There could be dozens of people heavily armed there, so that's what they're worried about. Fortunately, there weren't that many. They were able to approach it very quickly and stealthily and then take the initiative and gain complete control of that compound very quickly and do their job. It's a great operation, as Bob said. Our community, Bob and I have been involved in this for 30 years. We've had some real setbacks at Desert One during the Carter administration, Mogadishu in 1994, even back to Vietnam, the Sante raid when we tried to get some POWs out of a camp. This is, again, one of those classic operations, and it all went well, and the president made the right call. He could have gone in a lot of different directions, including shooting Predators or other missiles at this thing. This was a very risky operation. It turned out he made the right decision. It's a great day for our battle against al-Qaeda, and a big boost to our special operations and CIA operatives that put this together.
Do you have different rules of engagement in this kind of a case, Bob, where people get in the way of a high-value target like this? Is it much more dangerous for somebody to get in the way of an operation like this?
Oh, I mean, the orders are clear. Shoot anybody who even appears to resist, that hasn't hit the ground. You just shoot them. There is no choice. This happens so fast. They're talking about 40 minutes. It didn't take 40 minutes. We're talking about 2 minutes. It took the other 38 minutes to collect the intelligence, collect his corpse, which, by the way, was brilliant. We needed to get his body to check the DNA. We needed to bury it at sea so it didn't become a martyr shrine. You know, as far as I can see, nothing went wrong with this, and we still don't know how the Pakistani military was neutralized. That's a big question, because they couldn't count on that base next to bin Laden's house opening up fire. And there's parts of this operation they're not talking about in the press, as they shouldn't.
Well, I find it fascinating that let me go back to Michael first, and you, Bob, quickly, before we hear from the president, a clip from the president. How can the Pakistanis live with this? They get up and they realize we've captured the world's most wanted criminal in their country, basically some recent amount of distance from the main capital, not out in the Northwest Territories. And we did it, and they either deny they knew he was there, or they knew he was there and they admit keeping it secret. It looks like a lost for them either way, Michael.
Well, this is a very complex relationship, Chris. The Pakistanis have tried to hedge their bets in this part of the world for a long time. They're playing both sides of the deck here, and right now they're in a very embarrassing situation. The good news is they did try to put a happy face on this and insinuate that they were somehow involved in it, when in actuality they just showed up at the end. And hopefully we can use this as a positive momentum forward, but I could predict that this is probably just going to be another step in a very complicated, tricky relationship, but one that's essential for us to be successful as we move forward.
Okay, let's take a look at the president today. He paid tribute. Of course, we knew he would, but he did it well, to the Special Operations Unit that got bin Laden. Let's listen to the president.
And we're reminded that we are fortunate to have Americans who dedicate their lives to protecting ours. They volunteer, they train, they endure separation from their families. They take extraordinary risks so that we can be safe. They get the job done. We may not always know their names. We may not always know their stories. But they are there every day on the front lines of freedom, and we are truly blessed.
Okay, it's 2005. Everybody in the world knows that bin Laden is probably in Pakistan across the border. The people of the community in which this compound existed saw a compound being built up with 12-foot-high walls or higher. They watched barbed wire being put up around it. They noticed it being built, not only being built, but being kept quiet with nobody really coming in and out for years. Are we to believe they didn't think bin Laden was in there, Bob Baer? I mean, this is right ground zero where we expected him to be hiding. Somebody's building a huge compound, spooky as hell. Why in the world would we believe that the neighbors and the local police, who have to know what's going on in the locality, didn't ever walk in that front door and say, what the hell's going on in here?
Chris, we just have to assume the worst. It's somebody in Pakistan, in the military or ISI, knew bin Laden was in there, was protecting him. There is no other explanation. It's a police state. Foreigners don't move into a compound like that, and the police don't know, period, especially in a military cantonment like that. The question is, how far did it go up? Are we talking about a captain or a major that was brought into this, or does it go higher? It worries me. This isn't the Northwest Frontier Province. I mean, by the border or the tribal areas where the military can't go up. They were abutting a military academy. This is very bad news.
Do you agree with that, Michael? The fact that he's been sitting there and living basically in civilization in a country we targeted as his probable retreat area had gone to, his refuge, and there he was.
Well, Chris, there's no doubt about it. This is a tremendous embarrassment for the Pakistani government and their army and their intelligence service, the ISI. And there's just no excuse for this. And bin Laden was actually quite smart to kind of hide in the open by moving into a suburban town outside of the mountains there, living in virtual luxury. But he made a mistake by having such a large compound with huge walls and wires, which wouldn't prevent a unit like the U.S. Navy SEALs from getting in there. It just made it a bigger target, and it just shows that clearly either complete duplicitousness on the part of the Pakistanis or a complete failure. In either way, they got some explaining to do to the world and to the U.S. government on how they allowed this to happen for so many years.
You know what? Justice is hard to find, but I have to say this guy died a lot better than the people he killed at the World Trade Center. You know, I'm telling you, this was quick. 2 minutes. He's lucky. Anyway, thank you, Michael Sheehan. Thank you, Bob Beer. Great reporting, great inside information.